All right, so today we're going to finish up chapter 1. Okay, this will be the last section we do, and tomorrow we're going to do a review day. Okay, so tomorrow we'll just kind of stop, review everything for the test on Friday. All right, so the goal in this section is basically like Mr. Roy just showed you. You're going to have equations. They're going to have multiple letters in them. And we're going to be asked to get a particular letter by itself. Mr. Roy did an example where he got y by itself. They might ask us to get x by itself. They might give us a different formula that has other letters. Okay, but when you have an equation with all letters, okay, you don't have any numbers in it, that's just called a literal equation. Okay, or I'm sorry, an equation with two or more variables. Okay, two or more variables. That's called a literal equation.
So what's circled, guys, is what you have to write on this sheet. So for the first blank, you're going to write a little equation for the smaller one. And for the longer one, you're going to write get a particular variable by itself.
Now what we're learning today, this is going to come in very handy when we talk about what Mr. Roy just showed you, y equals mx plus b. Okay, we're not doing y equals mx plus b today. We're not graphing. We're not doing slope, y-intercept. But eventually we're going to, and you're going to have to do exactly what we're doing in this problem. Okay. For today, the goal is to somehow get that by itself. And everything else that's next to it, the 4x and the 3, we want on the other side. Okay, so any questions on the goal? Trying to get a letter by itself. Okay. First thing you have to do is look at it, read it, and what letter do they want by itself? Y. They could have said X, they could have said Y. Just make sure you read it so you know which one you're doing. You're going to get Y by itself. In order to get Y by itself, always get rid of the thing that's furthest away from the Y first. The 3, I look at that as right next to it. Okay, the 3 is right next to the Y. Think of it like it's right next to it, it's holding on tight. That 4x, it's separated a little bit. Okay? It's off a little bit, separated by a plus sign. So that's the first thing we're going to try to move. Can anybody tell me how you would move 4x to the other side? Yep.
You would subtract 4x from the left side and the right side.
And the right side. Okay. What does that leave me with on the left for now?
3y
3y.
equals.
And what's on the right?
Negative 4x plus 9.
Yeah. Now, was anybody thinking 9 minus 4x? Because if you do 9 minus 4x, that would be okay. You wouldn't be wrong. But we normally put it in that order. The negative 4x comes first, plus 9 comes second. Now, have we done it? Have we solved it for y?
No.
No, why not? What's still wrong? Y is not alone yet. So who can tell me something else that we have to get rid of? You don't have to tell me how. Just tell me what else we have to get rid of. Xander?
3.
We got to get rid of that 3. Now can someone else tell me how to get rid of it? Paige?
Divide.
Yep. Divide by
3.
3. And what do you have to divide by 3?
Everything.
Everything. That's the key. So when you do division in these kind of problems, it's usually going to be in 3 separate spots. Everything has to be divided by 3. And I think this is where some people get confused. They're like, well, wait, you didn't subtract 4x from everything. You don't. You only put the 4x once on the left. You only put it once on the right. With adding and subtracting, that's how you do it. But division, you do it everywhere. That's how it works. So how about Connor? What happens when you do 3 divided by 3?
It crosses out.
Good, it crosses out. And what do I have on the left-hand side now, Connor?
Negative 4x plus 9.
Just the left-hand side.
Oh, y.
Just y, good. Now, does 3 go into 4 evenly? No, so we're just going to leave that like that. Most people write it like that, okay? I know I had the x in the top, and then you're like, well, all of a sudden I put the x in the middle. That's how you normally do it, okay? Because when we get into y equals mx plus b, that number would be what we call the slope. And then plus. Is there anything else I can simplify?
3.
9 divided by 3, which is
3.
3. So, did we get a number for our answer? No, you're not going to get a number. Okay. All you're going to get is a new formula. Your new formula still has the same 2 letters in it that you started with. But what's the difference between the new formula and the one we started with? How did we simplify it? What did we do? What's the difference between what we started with and what we have now?
We got x by itself. I mean,
Close.
we got y by
We got y by itself. That's the only difference. Okay, we got y by itself. Any question on that? Does anyone want to look at the same problem, but instead of we'll get x by itself? Want to take a look?
Yeah.
Let's take a quick look at it.
You're awful.
Would we put this down for
You can write it or you
Put it
can
down.
watch. It's up to you.
To the left of it, one. Where we have space, under example example 1.
Can we put it under example 2 because it's asking to solve it for x?
No, so example 2 is going to be a different one.
Okay.
Right? So this is kind of a bonus example 1. What would be your first step if you wanted to solve this for x? It's kind of the same steps. Yep.
Subtract 3y.
Good. Do it here and where else? Underneath the 9. So remember, when you subtract, you only have to do it in the 2 spots. Who can tell me what I have left now? Just kind of clean that up a little bit. Yep.
Okay. Y plus 4x equals negative 3y plus 9.
Y plus 4x. No, hold on. What goes on the other side?
Negative 3y plus 9.
Okay. Does everybody agree with that?
I see one thing that's there that shouldn't be there.
Y.
This y. Right? 3y take away 3y. 0. Now, what would be my last step? Yep.
Divide by 4.
Good. Where do you do it?
On all 3 numbers.
Perfect. Everywhere. Here, here, and here. That's going to cancel. Can I reduce anything else? Does 4 go into 3? Nope. Does 4 go into 9?
No.
Nope. So we're pretty much just going to, I mean, you could just read this. Just circle that. That's your final answer. X equals negative 3/4 y plus 9/4.
Yeah.
So these 2 equations we circled, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just one of them has x by itself, one of them has y.
Yeah.
Now we'll do the example 2. Okay, so example 2, put this under your notes under example 2.
We can do it back.
Okay, the next one is important because there's something very similar to this on the test. Okay, the question I'm going to ask you about this next one. So a good one to write down. Okay. It says solve for x. And it says x plus 3 divided by 10 equals y. Now this is kind of a special situation. Okay, normally we do simplify, add, subtract, then we do multiply and divide. You could try to do it that way, but it's going to be more confusing. So this is special. Okay, what do you call this thing on the left here? It's a
fraction.
It's a fraction. Okay, how many things are in the top?
2.
2, and in the bottom?
1.
1. So it would be easier if we didn't have a fraction here.
Yeah.
What are we dividing by
10.
in this fraction?
10.
We're dividing by whatever's in the bottom. We're dividing by 10.
So you multiply 10 by it.
Exactly. So the first thing we want to do is what Joe just said.
Yeah, so then it'd be 10 times 10, so that cross out, so then it'd be x plus 3 equals y.
What?
Right? No, y equals 4.
Joe, calm down.
So let's look at what's going to happen.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so first of all, we had to divide by 10. First thing you want to do, Joe said multiply by 10. Does everyone understand why we're going to multiply by 10? What's the opposite of divide?
Multiply.
Multiply. So to cancel out
The 10.
this, okay, that's the goal. If we could get rid of that fraction, things are going to get a lot easier. So if you want to get rid of dividing by 10, do the opposite operation, multiply by 10. And Joe started to tell us what's going to happen here.
Yeah,
What happens when you divide by 10 and multiply by 10?
you cross the 10s cross out, and then so it'd be x plus 3 equals.
Okay, yep, stop there. X plus 3. That's all that's on the left. What's on the right now?
Y. Well, 10 y.
Y times 10, which we normally write as 10y.
Guys, even for that first part, right? I know it looks different because there's more than one term on the top of the fraction. But think what we did with like last week. We had x over 3, right? We still multiplied by 3. Don't get freaked out because we added another term up here, the plus 3. You're still going to do the same thing. You're still going to, when it's a fraction, still multiply by whatever on the bottom. Okay? You still multiply by whatever. Even though there's more than one thing on the top, it's okay. You're still going to do the same exact thing we did last week.
Okay, so now, have I done what they asked?
No.
No, what did they ask me to do?
Get x by itself.
Get x by itself. So when I'm done, I should have this.
Yes. So then you.
So how do I get?
Can I please answer this?
No.
How about Madison? How do you get x by itself?
You can subtract 3 on both sides.
Subtract 3. Subtract 3. And Madison, can you give me my final answer?
It would be x equals -3 plus 10y.
Yeah, perfect. That works. Or did anybody think a little bit differently?
I put 10y plus.
10y.
Minus 3.
Perfect.
Oh, minus 3.
Either way is correct. As long as the sign that's negative stays with the 3.
And guys, like Ms. Hager said at the beginning, try to get in the habit, even though we're not solving for y there, try to get in the habit of putting the variable, whatever the variable is, after the equal sign. So guys, in that problem, what was your first step?
Multiply.
Multiply, right? So keep that in mind, right? That was your first step in that type of problem. When you had a fraction, you had to multiply. Even though there was more than one term on the top of the fraction, you still have to multiply by the thing on the bottom. That's going to get rid of it, right? So keep that in mind. When you have a problem like that, your first step is going to be multiply. Very, very important. Your first step when you have that kind of a problem is going to be to multiply.
Now, what if they asked you to solve for y in this one? Yeah?
And you have to, like, put.
Well, think back to the original.
So you have to do 10y minus.
Can you remind me? Somebody remind me, what was the original problem?
X plus 3 divided by 10 equals y.
Yep. So what if they said solve that for y? What would you have to do?
You divide. No, you multiply 10.
You remember you're solving for y.
Oh, 4y. So then why don't you do
Whatever the top
x
is,
plus
you
3?
divide
So
by
it'd
the
be
bottom,
3x.
y.
3x.
Well, hold on. What does it mean to solve for y?
You have to get an answer for y. So what?
No, it doesn't mean to get a number answer for y.
Get y by itself.
Get y by itself.
So it's already by itself.
Yes, it's already by itself.
Oh.
So in the original problem, it was already solved for y. Just making sure you remember what that means.
Yeah, that was stupid.
Well, that's okay. That's why I asked it. All right, let's look at this one. I think you guys have the diagram, so you're good.
Yeah.
So you own a rectangular piece of property. Okay, maybe your house is there, and the frontage. Okay, that's the area of your property that runs along the road. Okay. So it says for this particular problem, your land has an area of 100,000 square feet. And depending on how much land you own, you have to pay a fee. Okay? You have to pay a fee in order to put in a new water system. So it says, first of all, find out how much land you own
It's 1,000 feet.
along the front. So let's just read. What did they tell us so far?
That the lot is 500 feet deep.
The lot is 500 feet.
There is 100,000 square feet.
Okay?
And then you have to pay $5.50 per foot of lot frontage.
So let's go back to that 100, what was it, 100,000 square feet? What is square feet measure?
It's, what do you mean?
Like what kind of
Like what foot, like what foot? If it said square
Foot.
feet, right? What kind of a problem is that? Like you're solving for the what of a rectangle?
The foot of oh, the
they,
width.
not the width, big difference between
Ah.
feet and square feet. What's the difference?
Square feet's area,
Yes.
Exactly.
So square feet is area.
So like Sophia just said, right, guys? What do we have to? We're gonna find what shape are we gonna find the area of? Yeah, the area of a rectangle.
So I need that formula. Can somebody tell me, this is more geometry, what's the formula for area of a rectangle?
A equals R times. It's
I mean, you can use different letters, but usually we use.
So you guys, for a rectangle, right? What are the two measurements
Length
you're gonna
plus
have?
width.
There's a lot of a triangle and what else?
length plus
Length
width.
and width.
Length
Good.
plus width. Or is it length times width?
It's length times width.
It's length times width. Okay, that's your formula for the area of a rectangle. Now, how many letters are in that's a literal equation, right? That's two or more letters. How many are in there?
How many letters total?
2.
More than 2.
3.
3.
There's 3 letters.
Out of those 3 letters,
If you do complex math
okay,
equations,
Noah,
you can't
you're going to tell me which one do I know?
Length,
Okay, what is that?
500 feet.
Yep. Can somebody tell me something else that I know?
You just say
The area.
What's the area?
100,000.
100,000. So we're going to fill that in there. We filled in length there.
I want to guess the width is like 250.
What don't we know that we have to figure out?
W.
W.
Width.
So how do you solve that equation for
You
W?
divide 500 for both sides.
Okay, divide by 500.
This is satisfying.
Excuse me.
Now when you divide, if you want to type this in with left zeros, you can cancel a 0, cancel another 0.
So it's 1,000.
1,500.
So it's 1,000 divided by 5.
Which is 500.
200.
Which is 2.
200.
200. Yep. What did I just find? That's the
The width.
width.
Length they gave us.
So what should that be? 200.
Square feet.
Careful, square feet is area.
Feet.
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 So you had the right idea with feet.
That sounded. That
Okay.
was fun.
So the width of our yard, okay, or the part of the yard that runs along the road,
Uh-huh.
is how long?
200 feet.
200 feet.
200 feet. Now, so what's that again? That's the width, but what do they call it in this problem? The frontage. Okay, that's the part of your yard that runs along the road. Part 2, okay, it says, how much are you assessed for the new water system?
So wouldn't it be like A equals 200?
Well, what does it say to pay for a new water system? What does it say?
It's 5. Oh, wait. To pay for it, you are assessed by $5.50 per foot of the lot frontage.
So you pay $5.50 for every foot of frontage. How many feet of frontage do we have?
200.
200.
200. Oh, what did I just say?
It was right.
And then times what?
200. 550 times 200.
Perfect.
Wow.
So what is it? A water or sewer system? Water system?
I don't know.
Oh, gosh.
So take how much land you own, okay, the frontage, and you're going to multiply by what's the cost you have to pay for every foot?
550.
550. Okay, and let's see how much it would
I
cost.
got
Joe, you don't got this.
So it would cost, how much money is that?
$1,100.
$1,100. And Noah said dollars, that's good, because you gotta put a label on that. Okay, so that's an example where we took a literal equation, we plugged in the two things we knew, and we found the one thing we didn't know. That's it.
That's a lot of money.
That is, yeah, well, yeah, sometimes things with your yard can cost a lot of money.
I'm gonna live in a cardboard box.
like having a retail sprinkler system in your front yard.
Okay, so any questions on how we got 1,100? All right. So let's we're gonna look at some formulas, and I think you guys have.
Yeah, that's good. They have like the description, and it's gonna write out the actual formula.
You gotta fill it in. So, can somebody tell me one unit or one system that we use to measure
Fahrenheit.
temperature?
Celsius. I'm
Fahrenheit.
I'm going
Fahrenheit
And then Celsius.
and Celsius.
And there's another one.
Yeah, there's also other ones. There's Kelvin. And
Kelvin. That's what it's
Isn't
called.
that Celsius?
No, that's like as cold can get. It's like cold.
so there's okay, guys. There's a formula to convert between the two. Okay, between Celsius and Fahrenheit, okay, and that's the formula. So in that box, we're going to put C equals 5/9, and then in parentheses F minus 32. Now there's also a formula to convert the other way.
Are we getting
Okay?
this?
That we're going to figure out together.
I have a question.
Yes.
So are we gonna get this like on a piece of paper for us for the test?
If it was a test, you always have your reference sheet. You could put it on there. If you
Yeah,
want.
I think sometimes, I think on the test guys, we might actually give you the formula we want you to use as well.
Yay! That'd be way easier.
Okay, so any question on the temperature formula?
No.
Okay, the next formula is I equals PRT.
It's like a 1.
That's an I equals PRT. Okay, so this is the formula for interest. So interest is money that a bank either pays you or you pay the bank, depending on like if you have a loan for a car or a house, you have to pay interest. If you put money in like a savings account, you make interest. So interest is just money having to do with a bank. There's a couple of things that interest depends on. One, it depends on how much money you have in the bank, right? So if you have $100 versus $500, you're going to make more or less interest. It also depends on what the bank is paying for an interest rate. Are they paying 0.5%? Are they paying 1%?
5%.
Okay, things like that. Now, when you write your rate, you always have to do it as a decimal. So, someone remind me, how do you write 12%?
0.12.
0.12. How about 3%?
0.3.
Careful, 0.3
Oh,
would be 30. 0.03. Okay, so anytime you use this formula, you have to put your rate as a decimal.
And guys, figure that even though it's not written there, the decimal point for 12 would be right here. Even though we don't write it, the decimal point for 3 would be right here. We're always going to move the decimal point 1, 2 places to the left, right? To change it from percent to decimal. Same thing down here. That's why it's 0.03 and not 0.3. 1, 2. Any little blanks I have, fill them in with zeros. All right? So we're asking you guys to go from percent to decimal, move it 2 places to the left. If it's a single digit number like 3, 5, 7, whatever, make sure you put a 0.
Okay, so we got the temperature formula, we have the interest formula, and the last one is the distance formula. Okay, distance equals rate times time. So D is your distance. R is how fast, like 20 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour. And T is how long you've been driving.
Is that I?
I equals PRT for the above one. Okay, notice some of these formulas have 4 letters in them. Some have 3. Okay, the first one we did only had 2. Okay, but these are all literal equations, and we'll practice right now with. I know we're going to do the interest one and the temperature one. Not sure if we're going to do a distance problem.
Do we have
Do we have to? Oh, you want it, Mr. Ray?
Joe?
We should,
no.
Joseph, why?
Stop, Joe.
Yeah.
Joe, so ask the teacher to do extra work, please.
I said, do we have to?
Does everybody have what's in the 3 boxes? Anyone else need it? Good. Okay. So, the first problem says to solve the temperature formula for F. Can somebody tell me what the temperature formula is I gave you? Yep.
C equals 5/9 times F equals
5/9.
5 minus 32.
F equals 30. I mean minus 32.
F.
F
Minus 32.
Parentheses. Excuse me.
Okay, what do they want us to do?
Solve.
They
For?
want you to find the formula for F.
What does that mean?
I mean solve. So
Solve
you get
for
F by
F.
itself.
Right, when we're done, we want something like this.
F.
F equals, okay. Now, when we have something in parentheses, okay, for this kind of problem, I want you to think of it like we did yesterday with absolute value. What if you had like 2 equals 12, and then you had something in absolute value? What was the first step we had to do here?
It's absolute value by
You would have
itself.
to divide 12 on both sides.
You had to get rid of the number that was in front. Okay, and in that case, you would divide. We've done this before. Does anybody remember how you get rid of a number in front that's a
You
fraction?
would multiply that
Okay, you would
by
multiply.
switching it to both sides, so it would be
Hold on, Joe. Let
9.
me give someone a chance. Hold on. What would you? You're doing great. I just want to try to give other people a little bit of chance to kind of say stuff too. So you are going to multiply. Can anybody tell me what you would multiply both sides by to cancel out what's in front? Yeah?
We do the reciprocal.
Yeah, which is
9 over 5.
perfect. So the goal is exactly the same. You have to get rid of the thing that's in front, just like we did yesterday. How you get rid of it depends on the problem.
Hey guys, let's say the one on the right with the absolute value, you would divide there. It's a little bit different. You divide for the absolute value, get it alone. This, because it's a fraction, right, that means division, you want to do the opposite. That's why we're multiplying.
So now 9/5 times C. Can I do anything when I have a number times a letter? Like if we had a number times a number, could we simplify that?
Yeah.
Yes. How about a number times a letter?
No.
No. So you're just going to leave it.
Yeah.
Again, most people just put the C in the
You
middle.
don't have to put the little dot in between.
What happens with the 9s on the other side?
They get crossed out.
And the 5s?
They get crossed out.
So now the only thing you have left
F minus 32.
is that. So that was the hard step.
So what
Now the easy step. What else do we have to get rid of?
the 30.
Joe?
The 32.
We got to get rid of the 32. Can somebody else tell me how we get rid of that negative 32? Plus 32. Perfect. Here and where else?
9 over 5.
Now, does the 32 have a C with it?
No.
So can I do anything with that?
No.
Just write it exactly the way you see it, but I'm not going to write it vertical. I'm going to write it in that box. So who can tell me what goes in that box? Yep, now.
F equals 9 over 5C plus 32.
Perfect. And that's it. So now if you gave me a formula in Celsius, I could plug it in and tell you what it would be in Fahrenheit. And you also have the formula to do the opposite. You could take a formula in Fahrenheit and convert to Celsius. So were we supposed to get a number for our answer?
No.
No. All we were supposed to do is get that letter by itself. Any questions on that one? All right, so let's change this a little bit. Let's solve the following formula for I.
So guys, you're gonna change that on your note sheet. All right. So you have E equals HP. So you're gonna change it to V equals IR, and then cross out everything like E is earnings, H is hours work, P is pay. You're gonna substitute with that. So we're gonna change this one a little bit.
Has anyone ever seen that formula before? Well, if you take electrical, you'll probably see it at some
Oh,
point.
yeah, I just took electrical.
Did you see that at all?
Oh, we didn't go over stuff like
You
that.
probably didn't do formulas. You don't have enough time to get into that.
We didn't do any writing on it.
But this is a formula that tells you it's a connection between voltage, current, and resistance. Okay? What that really means, well, if you take electrical, or you'll learn more about it. So, it says solve the following formula for I.
So guys, on your sheet, I think it's gonna say, what does it say? E equals, what was the formula we gave you?
E equals V,
E equals HP.
sorry.
Then it says, what's the first thing it says?
E is your earner.
E is whatever, da 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 da.
Just cross all that out.
Right.
E is
Is
what?
hours work.
So all the stuff that's written on your sheet,
V on your
cross it out, change it to this.
I.
V equals IR instead of E equals HP. And then E, when it explains what everything means, cross it out, change it to this. V is voltage, I is current, R is resistance. I'm just gonna change it.
So the question says to solve the formula for I. Okay, you're not actually getting anything numeric. Can anybody just tell me how you would get the I by itself?
How you get what by yourself?
You want to get this by itself.
Subtract the R from both sides.
Raise your hand, Joe.
Yep.
Subtract the R from both sides.
All right. What if you had V equals, let's say,
RI.
actually I'll even put in another number.
R.
5 equals I times 2.
I times 2.
How would you get the 2 on
Divide
this?
2 by both sides.
You divide. Same thing here.
Oh.
Okay. I could put the dot in there if you want to see it. But because that's multiplication, the opposite operation is division. So what would we divide each side by?
R.
R. Divide by R. Divide by R. So what does that say on the left?
So
What does it mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
that means so it would be
You could say, yeah, it's V over R.
Yeah.
What does that line mean?
divided by R.
And what is the whole thing? What's V?
So V is voltage,
Voltage.
divided by resistance
Voltage divided by resistance
equals current.
gives you how much current would be in that wire. Now, we're going to use that to figure something out. Let's say,
Where do you put this?
how many, what's that?
Where do you put this if you have no
You have no room?
Well, I don't even know.
Maybe you have a little space on the side where Mr. Roy gets you a piece of scrap paper. How many volts in your house, AC current? Not like a car. A car is a 12 volt. That's a DC.
Is it like an 8 volt?
Not in the US usually.
Wait, what did you have?
It's like
How many volts in a normal US house, the electricity?
15.
120 volts. Yep. So let's say you have,
Is that a guess?
No, actually, I actually.
Alright. So guys, again, we're as like the Dunkin' Donuts thing that you work at Dunkin' Donuts for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Cross that out, and you're gonna write this. We're not working at Dunkin's anymore. You got
But
5.
the donuts is so hard.
Actually, you didn't even start yet. You were 5.
Okay, so you have 120 volts. And let's say that you're working with a wire that has a resistance of,
150.
let's say,
50.
say
25.
50.
25. Let's do,
75.
it doesn't really matter. Let's do 40.
That's a nice even number.
Okay, so resistance is 40. Okay. If you're not sure, resistance, if you actually measure resistance, that's measured in what they call ohms. It has this symbol. That's the symbol. It has 40 ohms of resistance.
Looks like an EMT clip.
Oh, what?
EMT clip.
What's that?
So the question is, what would the current be? Does anybody know what current is measured in for electricity?
Water. I don't know. Oh, I learned about this in Boy Scouts.
I know I've heard this before. I learned about this in Boy Scouts. Isn't it
Amperage.
like something per?
Amperage. It's measured in amps.
Oh, okay. There it
Amps?
is. Amp.
Not ants, ants.
Like amplified.
Hey,
Also, VPS volts per second.
so how would I use that information in that formula? What would I fill in first?
Wait, sorry, what was that?
What would I fill in first?
You would fill in. What do we have? Oh, so you fill in the resistance. No, the volts.
Okay,
So it'd be 120.
yep, let's start with that. So my voltage is 120. Connor, is there anything else that I was given?
40.
40 is the what?
What letter is that going to go in for?
R.
Yeah,
Tell
good.
me.
I
So
know how to answer.
120 divided by 40. And what's that going to calculate? That's the
30?
All right.
No, that's
The current.
the current. So what's the current?
30.
It's the,
Careful, huh?
it's 3.
It's
Three.
3.
30.
Okay, you don't have to worry about putting amps. You could just put 3. That's fine. So the current would be 3.
That's actually quite easy.
That's so easy.
It's not too
The
bad.
biggest thing is just making sure you can rearrange the formula to get what it's asking you to do.
Any question on that? Okay, last one.
No.
Okay, which formula is this one going to use that I gave you?
Distance.
No,
No.
it's not a distance
The
one.
temperature. No,
Oh.
interest.
You see Fahrenheit.
How many people think it's the interest one?
Hi, boo.
Yeah. So, can somebody remind me what the interest formula is?
I equals PRT.
Use your hand.
Equals PRT. All right? And I'll let Mr. Roy
Oh, Mr. Hager.
take you through this one so you guys can stop hearing me the whole time.
Thanks, man.
Aw.
Nice swell guy.
Don't think
You're
so
welcome.
low of yourself.
All right. So each of these things means something, right?
Yeah.
Somebody besides Joe. I love his beautiful voice, but I've heard it an awful lot today. Somebody besides Joe. Oh, my friend, Mr. Fairbanks, in the back. What does I stand for? If you're not sure, there's a little box on your notes, and it gives you all the formulas.
Oh, interest.
Interest, right? Okay. So I equals interest. Right? So that means, does anyone know what interest is? Anyone have any idea what interest is?
I think
What it
Mr.
means?
Roy, I talked about it.
You talking about it?
Yeah.
What is it, Zan?
You said we talked about it.
What is it? Well, tell me anyways.
Interest isn't like that weird, like, it's something to do with banking, right?
Yeah, okay.
It's
Sophia?
like if you
have a certain amount of money in your bank account,
Yeah.
in a year's time,
Yeah,
they'll give you a certain
every
amount.
month, you open up a bank account, like every month, you get like a statement. And over that time, you're gonna make a little bit of interest, right? It's money that the bank is paying you to have an account with them. Now, on the other hand, when would you owe interest? When would you, like, interest gain, you have to pay it back?
Like when you're running out,
When you don't have money.
yeah, when you,
All right, well, who are you getting the money from?
your owner.
The bank, right? You're gonna take the loan from the bank, right? So Mr. Hager and I have a mortgage on our house, right? It's how much we have to pay per month. So we buy the house for a certain amount of money, but we're paying more than that because it's a fee that the bank is charging us to borrow money from them, right? So it builds up over time. So it works both ways. The bank pays you to have an account with them, right? For you trusting them to give them your money. But now they're giving you money, so you have to pay them. It works both ways. All right, how about P? Mallory?
Principal?
Principal. All right, what's the principal?
No.
What's the principal?
Okay.
Anybody know?
How much interest?
No. Interest.
Oh, I'm stupid, sorry.
What's the principal? Anybody know?
It's definitely not part of the
So if you guys, if I'm gonna buy a house, right? Will they just give it to me?
No, you have to have the principal money.
Not that the principal money, right? Principal's gonna be what I'm gonna put down. How much money I put down right up front. So I put down whatever, $50,000. That's the principal. How much I'm putting down. How much I'm paying. Correct, Ms. Hager? Well, if I'm putting something into account, right? I'll put a principal of $300 in an account. All right, that's how much I'm investing.
Yeah, or how much you borrow.
How much you borrow, how much you put in. Like if you're gonna put into like a savings account, you're gonna make money over time. All right. So principal, we get the R, which is the what? R stands for what? Over the sheet.
Annual interest rate.
Rate. Right. And how do we have to write it? Do we leave it as a percent? Do we leave it as a percent? No.
Put it into
Make
a
it as a decimal, right? Remember, how many places to the left?
Two.
To the left. Last thing is what? T stands for?
Time.
Time, right? How long you did it for. All right? So that's everything. So let's look at it. So you deposit 500. So our choices are I, P, R, T. What is that going to be? Which one? Is that going to be my interest, principal, rate, or time?
What? The 500.
That's how much I'm putting in. How much
Principal.
That's the principal, right? So I'm just going to write next to principal, 500. Or $5,000. In an account that earns simple interest, okay? After half a year.
Interest.
Half a year, what is it? Interest, rate, or time?
Time.
That's the time, right? Half a year. So I'm just going to put like half or 5. How long is half a year?
300.
What?
6 months, right? So I'm going to
Just a full year.
So guys, for that, you don't have to change it. You can just leave it as a half. You don't have to change it.
Can we put down 180?
Huh?
Can we put down 180 because it's half a year?
No, so we'll leave it like that. All right. The account earns $162.50 in interest. So Connor, which one of those things is it going to be? We have the interest and we have the rate. Which one's it going to be?
Interest.
Interest, right? So it says it, right? So I'm going to put 162.
Joe, the reason you can't put 180 is because the question asks for annual interest rate, so you have to keep your time in years.
Yeah.
If you put like 12,
Oh.
you would be finding the monthly interest rate,
Yeah.
or 6 in this case.
So that's another one it's asking for.
So it's annual, which means yearly.
Oh.
So
Okay.
here's I have everything now. Remember, when we do these, there's always going to be one thing that we don't know. Right? There's always going to be one thing that we don't know. Okay? So, what am I going to write in for I? Someone tell me by raising their hand. We already have it written down over here. What's I going to be? Xander with a Z?
Interest.
I is interest. Do I have an actual number amount for that? What is it? 162.50. Now all I'm doing is plugging in to the formula. 162.50. Mackenzie, the next thing in my formula is what letter? I just did I just put the equal sign. What's the next thing in my formula? No? I just did, that's done. Equal sign, I wrote in. What's the next thing? P. Do I have a principal amount for my list? Here's I, P, R, T. Do I have a principal amount? How much? 5,000. Yeah, you did it right. You're good. 5,000. That's my 5,000. How about Connor? How about rate? So I just did principal. Now I'm at rate. Do I have an amount for rate? So what should I put? On 0. That's what I want to find, right? So how's it written in the formula? We're just going to put R, right? Because that's how it's represented in the formula. 5,000 R. And then what's the other thing I have?
1/2.
The time, which is 1/2. I'll just put half. Okay. Now, even though I have the R in between the 5,000 and the 1/2, what can I still do? What can I still do that? Guys, listen, I would have done like 3 minutes, but there's a question very similar to this on a test, so you want to pay attention.
Okay.
All right? So I got 5,000 and I got 1/2. What can I do with those two numbers? Close. Mallory? All right. Noah said divide. I said Noah was close. Paige? Multiply, right? I'm gonna do 5. Even though there's R's in between them, I can still these are almost like terms. I can multiply them together. I can't do the R, but I can multiply these two things. So basically, it's asking is what's half of 5,000? 2,500. So 2,500. What else needs to be on that side?
1/2.
Already did that. I multiplied those two things together. Good. No on the R. On my left-hand side, what's left? 162.50.
I didn't say anything, but okay.
I thought you said something about 1/2. I'm
I
sorry.
didn't say a word.
Okay. Now, one more thing. Sound like you said.
I got it right on your
You
mind.
divide.
Now, someone tell me the last step. Ginny, I know you're still writing stuff down, but I'm at my last step here. Even though the numbers are bigger, we're still going to do the same thing. We're at the last step of solving the equation. It's going to be the same pretty much every time. What do I have to do? Shh. So what do I do? Divide by what number? This one or this one? That one. That's 2,500 or 2,500. Now I'm going to do it over here too.
We need some calculator out here.
We got it.
I already got it.
All right. So we're gonna clear it. Remember when we're doing this, always do the number on the top first. 162.50 divided by 25.
No.
I can't read that.
So now I got 0.065. Now, that's as a decimal, right? So when I have,
He's just too good.
it's as a decimal, right? But how should rate be measured? If I'm plugging into a problem, like if it gave me the rate, I want to plug it in. It's gonna give it to me as a percent. I want to make it a decimal. Now I did all the work. It's giving it to me as a decimal. I want to make it a percent. So remember before we had like 12, all right? And I wanted to make that a decimal, right? What did I do? The decimal point was here, right? And I want to make it a decimal, right? 1, 2. It becomes what?
0.12.
0.12. Now it's a decimal. I want to make it a percent. What do I do? Now it's a decimal. I want to make it a percent.
Move it to the right.
Exactly. How many, Mallory?
2.
Do the exact opposite. When I'm going from percent to decimal, I think of it like this: D to P. When I go from percent to decimal, it's 2 to the left. When I go from decimal to percent, I go 2 to the right. That's how it works. So now I'm going from decimal to percent. I go 2 to the right. 1, 2. What is that? Don't worry about the zeros.
6.5.
6.5%. That's my answer. So remember, when it gives you the rate in the problem to plug in, you're not solving for the rate. It gives it to you. Remember, it's giving you as a percent. Make it a decimal, right? So make sure you go 2 to the left. If you have to find the rate, go 2 to the right. Homework, right? Worksheet 1.5. Also keep in mind a couple things. Number 1, tomorrow, very important. Make sure to bring your Chromebook to class, right? Chromebook. Why don't Mr. Hager and I want you to bring your Chromebook to
So
class?
you could study
No.
or revise.
Review.
No.
Play Kahoot.
No.
Play a game.
No.
Play Kahoot.
Oh, listen to YouTube to go through everything.
No.
Quizlet.
We have a
No.
Google Classroom.
To print our,
Right.
Run
The
away.
reference sheet, right? We're gonna give you guys time in class at the end of the review tomorrow, just like we did last academic Thursday, to go on and get the reference sheet. Make sure you do it. A lot of you guys didn't do it last week.
You're just kidding me.
All right? I think that just about covers it.